God,
God,
grant me the
the
serenity
serenity
to accept the
that the
things I
things
cannot change,
change,
the courage
courage
to
to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
All right, welcome to the Georgia Region's first virtual convention. Gregna 39.5 new possibilities arise. Our intention for this virtual convention is to make available to our fellowship a weekend of recovery, celebration, and fun.
I got
Excuse
it.
me. We hope all addicts receive the NA message of recovery and while they are participating in this event. It is our hope that the message we carry may truly let everyone know that NA is a place to recover and that no addict seeking recovery die from addiction. All right, participation guidelines, suggestions. Please dress appropriately while on camera. Please keep your mic on mute unless you are asked to unmute by the host or co-host. If you have a question or need general assistance during the workshop, please contact the host or one of the co-hosts via direct message in chat. If there is time after our workshop speakers finish, participants may have an opportunity to share their experience, strength, and hope on the workshop topic. If you would like to share after the speakers are finished, please raise your virtual hand. We're going to blow this off because we're going to ask everybody to participate. And on a side note, Candace, would you text Josh and tell him how to get into his meeting through that sessions, please?
Josh J or Josh D?
Josh J.
Okay.
And would someone please be kind enough to read how it works? Okay, my name's George. I'm an addict. This is how it works. If you want what we have to offer and are willing to make the effort to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. These are the principles that made our recovery possible. We admitted that we were powerless over our addiction and our lives had become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. We continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message and to addicts and practice these principles in all our affairs. Could I get someone to please read the 12 traditions?
I can do that for you, George. Hi, everybody. I'm an addict named Des.
He does.
And here's the 12 traditions of NA. We keep what we have only with vigilance, and just as freedom for the individual comes from the 12 steps, so freedom for the group springs from our traditions. As long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that would tear us apart, all will be well. Number 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on NA unity. Number 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. Number 3, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using. Number 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or NA as a whole. Number 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. Number 6, an NA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the NA name to any related facility or outside enterprise. Lest problems of money, property, or prestige divert us from our primary purpose. Number 7, every NA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Number 8, Narcotics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. Number 9, NA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. Number 10, Narcotics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the NA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. Number 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And number 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Thank you for allowing me to read.
And thank you so much for reading. So once again, everybody, my name's George. I'm an addict, and one of our wonderful co-hosts produced this deal for us. This is our share. Can everybody see that all right?
Yeah, will you move that little arrow on the right-hand side over where it says export PDF and all that stuff on that right menu bar? Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right there.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So anyway, our convention is GRCNA 39.5, and this workshop is social media and NA. And for those y'all that are unaware, we threw this thing together pretty quick. And so anyway, this is a topic that, you know, I have a lot of interest in and desire to not only learn, but something that I dabble in within the fellowship. Okay. And so I had the opportunity, I reached out to Nick and Des. They're both people that I respect a lot. And I'm trying to get to know even better as this thing goes on. We got together a couple of times to make some notes and figure out what we wanted to talk about. One of the big things that we wanted to talk about was what we thought were some important factors dealing with social media and Narcotics Anonymous, but we also really wanted this to be an interactive event, okay? So anyway, I'm going to start this thing off, and then we're kind of just going to get in where we fit in. And being that we're a small group and all that, you know, if you have a question or whatever, please raise your hand, and Candace will recognize you, and you can ask questions as you would like or make points or whatever, okay? And so anyway, I laid up here the types of social media, and I've got networking or whatever, Facebook and Twitter, media sharing apps, which could be Instagram or YouTube, and then forums would be more like Reddit and Zoom, okay? And you see, she's got all your icons put up there. You should be able to see me hovering over Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, and Zoom, okay? And oops, one too many. Our tradition 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. We share our message openly with the public at large, with prospective members, and with professionals. Maintaining an open, attractive attitude in these efforts help us to create and improve relationships with those outside the fellowship. Establishing and maintaining commitment to these relationships can help us to further our primary purpose. And that came from the PR handbook. All right, and so here's the interactive part. We want you to be involved, and if you don't ask questions and if you don't participate, you're going to have to listen to me talk most of the time. So that would be terrible. So anyway, some of the questions the best questions we came up with were, you know, are you just a viewer or do you interact in social media? Do you share personal information? Do you share group content, maybe for your group, your area, your region, or just for the fellowship? And who and what do you follow? And with that, you know, would love to have anybody chime in. Nick, Des, get in where you fit in.
We have a couple of hands up. Do you want to go first, Patty?
Sure. My name's Patty. I'm an addict.
Hey, Patty.
And I use Zoom exclusively for my meetings. I don't go to in-person meetings. And as a matter of fact, my home group is in California. Although I live in Brunswick. And I go to meetings up in North Georgia and in South Florida. I don't, other than using Zoom for that purpose, I will occasionally post something on Facebook to, like announce the convention or something like that. But for most of the social media presence that I have, I do not identify as an addict because, I have friends that are work friends also. And I think that there is a whole lot of stuff that's not real clear when you start talking about social media. And, and I'm always drawn back to the principles before personalities. And, I'm willing one-on-one to talk to anybody. And if somebody picks something up, in something that I posted or in a reaction to somebody else's post, because I have friends that do identify on social media, and they contact me, I'd be willing to talk to them, but I don't publicly identify as an addict for various reasons. And I think it's a personal, I think from an individual perspective, I think it's a personal preference. From a group or something larger than that, I think there's a lot of stuff we need to learn because of the fact that it is the traditions that are there. And I don't know. I'm just, I think a lot of it can be a slippery slope. And thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Patty. Good to see you. I can't see who's asking. Okay, it's Lucretia.
Lucretia's up next.
Hi guys, my name is Lucretia. I'm an addict here in Pittsburgh, and I'm used to using, I'm beyond tickled that you all have everything on Facebook, because for so long I saw an opportunity to use Facebook in this way, but some of the predecessors in our area were so concerned that social media was in essence radio or TV programming. So this is so good. So I basically use Facebook. I haven't ever gone onto Twitter. I'm a millennial, but I'm on the far end. And I also do have intherooms.com, which I have an online home group and I have for like a collective year. So that's my 2 cents, Facebook.
I could chime in real quick because, I have a small electrical business in Northeast Georgia. And so that's where I learned a ton about Facebook. And, I have to be careful with what I post on that page. And being a businessman, my personal page is connected to that page. So I can't post politics there. I mean, guys, I've been to jail 35 times in the state of Georgia. My neighbors are tickled to death that I'm in Narcotics Anonymous. They know I'm in recovery. They know they haven't been robbed lately by me. So, but that's not everybody's story, right? And the big thing that really pushed me to want to do this workshop was just the simple fact of us having the discussion of what is proper behavior and actually talking about having a policy in our region and in our areas about doing these things. And because at the end of the day, you know, we have some younger people in this meeting, but I'm getting older as well. And you know, during the pandemic, I mean, I'm high risk. I got high blood pressure. I'm overweight. I got diabetes. I'm gonna tell you, I've been to like 6 in-person meetings in the last year. And I don't want to get sick. I don't live in open fear, but I'm not playing Russian roulette either. And I try to follow like-minded people. I try to like, you know, it might be your cat. I don't care about cats, but if it's a cool picture of a cat, I like it. You know, I don't have to respond to everything that's up there either. So that's all I got.
I can jump in. Hi guys, I'm an addict named Des. I come from Wisconsin in the United States, and I can say that I use social media in a couple of different ways. I use it personally and I use it professionally. And I can tell you that the thing that I try to be careful of with social media is I'm all about meeting people where they're at. So if I'm going to be involved with a group that has to do with an anonymous fellowship, Narcotics Anonymous, I prefer for those groups to be private and not open to the public, because I don't know if I want everybody to know that I'm like, that's not my leading card in the community all the time, is that I'm an addict. So, but I do want to be involved with some groups that share information. So I'm always super careful to make sure that when I'm sharing with somebody or sharing, you know, on somebody's page, that I'll maybe send them a private message. I think I've learned that a private message goes a lot farther with anonymity than post on a wall privately, because that's not really a thing in social media. I also know that in the groups, I try to be careful to make sure that the ones involving NA are also private to the world, so that the people within the groups can invite the people that they know would want to be a part of that group. And those are the things that I do. I think social media is a great way to get connected. I can tell you that I didn't use Facebook until I had a woman that I was sponsoring many years ago, and that was the only way that she would communicate with me, was through Facebook Messenger. And I can also tell you that a lot of my interaction with social media has been based on how the individuals I sponsor choose to communicate with me. Because let's face it, when I got clean, we used pay phones, and I can't expect somebody to stand and put quarters in a non-existent payphone anymore to call me. But if they say this is how I communicate, then I learned that social media, and I'm super grateful for that. So so that's all I'm going to share. I see we have a hand up. So
we have Nick next, then we have Tammy Lynn, then we have Lawanda.
got it.
I'm running it in the chat.
Thank you, Candice. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm Nick. I'm an addict, and I thought I better jump in. So, just on what we have on the slide, I mean, there's a couple of things I try and remember. First of all, you know, that the 11th tradition doesn't mention television. It talks about the level of press, radio, and films, which to me means that we don't identify ourselves in publicly viewable media as members of Narcotics Anonymous. So, which isn't actually, when it comes to social media, it isn't necessarily that helpful, because some social media is publicly viewable and some of it isn't. And it really does depend how it's set up. One of the things that I think has been helpful information to me is to consider the basic business model of a platform like Facebook. Facebook makes their money by selling access to your page, by selling your information. They have no interest as a business in maintaining your personal privacy. The settings change regularly. There are plenty of ways around what are supposed to be private settings. There's plenty of ways around that. They're quite easy to open. So just being aware of that reality is, I think it's important. I think it's an important part of the conversation. You know, just because we create, you know, they might call something a private group, and the terminology changes and the settings change continually. So that can be a real challenge. Just because it says it's private, it really doesn't mean it is. And I don't think that the principle of this tradition is negotiable. So it's one of those things where, I mean, when they wrote the traditions, and most people didn't have a TV in their home in the late 1940s when the traditions were first formulated. So that's why it doesn't mention television. But that doesn't mean that we all just go on television and tell everyone we're an NA member. So I view social media with caution, definitely. Yeah, my family is all in the UK. I've been here been in the US for a long time, but my family's all there, and I don't really want my nephews and nieces to, you know, particularly know about Uncle Nick's, you know, sordid past as a drug addict. It just doesn't seem appropriate to be that, to talk about it in that way. You know, I'm very much like Des in that sense. Well, I will sit down and I'm happy. I don't hide the fact that I'm in recovery, but I also manage the way that I share that information. I'm happy to share that information with somebody that I just met if it seems like an appropriate moment. Like, but just to kind of stick my head out the window and yell it seems not really what this tradition is asking us to do. So I'm very cautious with sharing personal information. Most of the stuff I actually share is pictures of hikes that I've been on and stuff like that. You know, I don't use the public side of my Facebook, my social media presence to really talk a lot about Narcotics Anonymous. I am in some more that are in private, what I believe to be private groups, and again, I'm still fairly cautious there. I think because of some of the limitations of communicating in that way, and maybe I'll share a bit about that later. My group doesn't use Facebook. My home group is a very traditional group, very, very traditional. We've been meeting since 1975. Greg P started our meeting, so on. So we've had the same meeting format for 46 years now. Even when we went to Zoom, we just carried on doing the same thing. And that's cool. And that's one of the reasons I like it in that sense. And the following, I don't follow much. I do follow the NA World Services Instagram page because, you know, because I do. And then mostly I just look to see what my crazy nieces are up to, really. You know, and pictures of people's pets and stuff. But with all that, that's my personal approach. But I also see other stuff from where I sit. And I had a conversation yesterday that sort of blew my mind a little bit with a guy in Philadelphia that was a year ago, was like me, was like a Zoom savvy person. So when everything just suddenly changed a year ago, he got drawn into helping groups open and got very involved with this kind of quarantined NA. Had a friend in Seattle and spoke at the first quarantine NA Seattle meeting, which is to me, I don't really know what the word is for that. It's kind of this hybrid of a NA group and a social media presence, and he'd looked at some of the numbers, the people that are in those. There are 5 main quarantined NA groups, and the number of members, people in those groups that that he gave to me. I think it's difficult to be accurate because some people might be in all 5 of them. But he gave me a number of 100,000 members, 100,000 NA members in those 5 quarantined NA groups, which completely blew my mind. You know, that is just really significant in a bunch of different ways. I mean, some of it is just about, you know, if you want to share your meeting flyer with tens of thousands of people, okay, there's that. But I think there's something deeper about how social media can be part of our identity as a community, that it can be a way for us to connect, especially at a time when we really can't connect. You know, in that, you know, you can't go to the World Convention and be in a room with 20,000 people, but you can be in this kind of really large community. So I guess that's why they call it social media, right? So anyway, so that's me for the minute. I think we'll go on to the next person.
Thank you. Next we have Tammy Lynn. She's still with us?
Yes, I had to unmute. Thank you. Hi, I'm Tammy Lynn. I'm an addict. Okay, let me breathe because I don't want to offend anybody. I am so new to NA. I came in here. My neighbor introduced me to it through social media because, you know, like whatever the lockdown here in my state. So that's how I was debating on what groups out there, and knowing that NA identifies it's the disease of my addiction, not the substance of it. So I couldn't want to, or I didn't choose the other programs. And knowing that I need help, want help, asking for help, I'm very too open and raw, blunt, to, I guess, kind of now, if they see the light in me, people, and personally, I do share and say it's the NA program that works for me. It's because of them that I got to quit with this obsession thinking, because my compulsive behavior always acted extreme where I hurt my family members, and it's a work in progress to get them back in time. So that I do kind of combine, I listen and hear what people say and do take that as respect. But because I had my family always, their opinions or beliefs had to be my beliefs in the walk. I choose to not have that lifestyle anymore. So it's kind of tricky for me to care to have NA as privately, to say somewhat, but it's not like I go around being the bulletin board, you know, wearing the logos or stuff like that. But yeah, when you do approach me, you talk to me and you hear and you see, because I am a very, you know, open person to love to talk. I just talk about what it's done for me and how good I feel inside of me, and not to care what everybody else thinks, because that's what damaged me in my obsession, was thinking your way was the right way, and I'm tired of following that way. So I do, however, have a sponsor, and her suggestions are always appreciated, that I know to follow it, and I feel more free. So if I kind of hide that I have this addiction, and I'm still learning, like, you know, how to categorize it as recovery or the NA program, that is a working learning process for me. But yeah, social media is a thing for me, and knowing that the newer generations that are coming, you know, like my children and my grandchildren, this is their lifestyle, where this is how they're going to find stuff, instead of like us in the telephone pages or newspapers and radios and press, you know? So today was a great day to get invited from my sponsor, this convention. It's my first time. Like I said, I'm so new to NA. To hear the diversity, that's the key that I like to know. The, you know, the, like you said, the sex, religion, race, you know, how it all can fit in together when it just seems so complicated because of our world. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy Lynn, and welcome.
Thank you, Tammy Lynn. Welcome. Keep coming back.
I think we have LaWanda next.
Hi family, Lawan's a grateful recovering addict. Sorry you all, I'm not off screen, but I can see y'all. Y'all can't see me. You know, I like not to make life such a gloom lot. And before I go any further, I'm gonna say, Des, Jeff, Greg. George, I'm sorry. George, you know I mean to call you Greg. I see you, George. George, what you doing over there, George? Candace, Nick, Tamerlyn, Patty, and I just want to say hi to everybody. And thank God for GRCNA putting this on. And this meeting right here, I guess this is like going to a tradition meeting or a concept meeting, right? Because it's only a few of us in here. And this is something that's very important, and it is very important to our survival. I got to be careful because I'm not screaming at you all. The ceiling is high, and it makes my voice echo. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit. And if I whisper, then tell me to bring it up. You know, I'm going to get to the point, but Greg, I believe it. Why do I want to call you Greg, George? I guess I need to check on the Narcotics member named Greg. George, I think it was you that pointed out when we were at GRCNA that us going to brick and mortar meetings could be a reflection on Narcotics Anonymous if we all get sick. Was that not you, George? Okay.
If it did, it should have been.
Yes. So what I'm saying is how we handle social media could be a reflection. And I want to read this, and then I'm going to share my perspective. It says, one of the first, and I'm reading you all from Social Media and Our Guiding Principles. It's a little pamphlet, an IP. One of the first questions to be asked with regards to social networking is whether this form of media falls under the scope of our 11th tradition, which states our public relation policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. It's worth pointing out that the 11th tradition was written before the widespread of the use of television, and yet the language of the tradition is flexible enough to cover that form of media. Similarly, the language of the tradition still seems broad enough to apply to other new types of media, including the internet in general and social networking in particular. And so this is the reason that I jumped over to what we talked about at GRCNA, at Region. If we are not careful about maintaining our personal anonymity, our activities and interactions on social network sites can be a reflection on Narcotics Anonymous, affecting the way our fellowship is viewed both by potential members and by those who might refer addicts to NA. While some of us may maintain the perception that this type of anonymity is only important for celebrities or high-profile members, this is not the case. The 11th tradition essay in It Works How and Why reminds us wherever we go, we always represent NA. Wherever we go, we always represent NA to some degree. We want the reflection to be a source of attraction rather than a source of embarrassment. By revealing our NA membership online, we become representatives of the fellowship, whether or not we want to be or not. I'm gonna read that sentence again. By revealing our NA membership online, we become representatives of the fellowship, whether or not we want to be. And any of our individual behavior or opinions can be misunderstood as the reflection of NA as a whole. So what it's saying is that if I don't act appropriately on social media, right, then all of a sudden I'm an ambassador for the person who does not know our steps, our tradition, and concepts, whether they're a member or not, or they're a prospective member. I'm off of social media, but I do have the issue that I have on social media is, first of all, I say to people who wants to argue that social media doesn't fit into that RAM, even here on this virtual platform, right? If it's being recorded. So that falls under that. You all are on my computer. If I put you on my tablet right now, but if you're on my computer, I can print you all. Right? Or some people got those savvy devices, they can even film and record what's going on right now. So it covers this. One of the things that gripes my goat about social media, and I'm gonna just pick on Candace because I like the way she looks. You know, me and Candace, you know, we hanging out and we buds, and Candace say, hey, you and George pose for a picture. And me and George, you know, we happy, we all giddy, we at the convention, and this big old NA emblem is behind us. And Candace takes this picture and puts us on her social media. She doesn't know, she might, but she doesn't know whether or not my employer, I'm a disabled veteran right now, but my profession is a profession that people don't want to know that an addict is handling your money. Mm-hmm. And the last stigma to go, we know it, is that always an addict wants an addict. So I want to try to wrap this up because I spent a lot of time in the reading. So with the social media thing, first of all, personal anonymity, yes, it's up to me to say that I'm an addict, right? But I need to respect that because I need to respect it more than ever because this scope is so broad. There's face recognition. I can say, oh yeah, I'm going to close my page. But what about my employer who might be able to that has purchased to be able to access all pages, as the other gentleman who said, who can do face recognition? Right. Even on this virtual platform, and my face isn't hidden from you all because of that, but even on this virtual platform, because people can get on these meetings, sometimes it might be best to hide your face and change your name because we don't know who's scanning. If we got the bombers getting on here, right? So can you imagine the intelligent people who trying to find out, like, what are we doing? And your IP addresses are not secret. Our IP addresses are not secret. So this thing is really, this is a subject that we as members, because we're in an inverted triangle, need to handle, and NAS as a whole, we really need to address this, and we need to speak to our members in a respectful but loving and a yet firm way, to let them know how important this is, because I understand the younger people that this is their venue, but this is their will. And this is the last thing I'm gonna say. People who heard about Narcotics Anonymous in the 80s, in the 90s, through press, radio, and film, there were no names attached. And a lot of times when it was on radio, now sometimes we use people in Narcotics Anonymous, but they even hired people who were not members so that their voices could not be recognized as members of Narcotics Anonymous. So I love you all. I've said more than enough. George said that darn LaWanda, she always does. I'm just picking on you, George. I love you all, and I'm gonna be quiet.
Thanks, Lawanda.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for sharing.
We have Jeff.
Jeff, I'm an addict.
Hi, Jeff.
I wasn't going to share in really in any of our meetings just because of their recordings. I never thought about it before. Years ago, I was actually regional PI chair at one time in our area PI chair. So I did not think much about social media until a friend's wife asked me to send, and this just happened recently in the past 6, 7 months, asked me to send some pictures that were taken at the GRCNA in Macon of the three of us. And I noticed in every single picture, where was his badge? What did he do with his badge? You know, the name tag. He had thrown it behind his neck on his back for every time he took a picture with somebody. And so I asked her, I said, hey, you know, why did he do that? And she said, because he's a public servant, because of his job. And then I got to thinking about, well, wait a minute, what about my job? What about what I do? And here in this past year, I've started working with, you know, the Federal Emergency Management and the Georgia Emergency Management. And, you know, and I have the keys to drug boxes in our buildings. What happens when other employees find out? What happens when residents, family members find out? What happens when the guys at FEMA find out? You know, I had to go through my Facebook and eliminate. I mean, I went from probably, I don't know, 1,100 people on there. I'm like at 400 now. Only one employee at work, no, two. And they both know that I'm recovering, but no one else does. I have to be very careful with that. And I did not think about the impacts of, you know, when I heard that we would be putting speakers on YouTube, I went, great. You know, that's awesome, because it's, you know, I was thinking of the attraction. And then, you know, I found out that, you know, here recently, 2 individuals were turned in for something they did by another addict that was just mad, you know, just mad at them. And Nick said it, you know, when we look at our traditions, and LaWanda said how you know, I remember when the board sent that out, and, you know, and it, you know, but there were 6,000 TVs worldwide, was about the average in 1946 when the good doctor wrote that in that article with what the AA's view of the 12 traditions. There are billions in households now. I mean, most households have 3 and 4 TVs. I'm not so. My worry today is, and LaWanda hit on it, is respecting other people's where they are in their anonymity, where they want to keep their anonymity. You know, at one time I wore NA t-shirts and had drawers full of them. The conventions loved it when Patty and I decided, you know what, I'm not wearing NA t-shirts anymore, because we gave them boxes of t-shirts from, you know, going all the way back to the early 80s. They loved it. They make good money. But I think the biggest thing we need to remember is even though we, you know, me personally, I may personally be okay with sharing whatever it is you share on Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, all of them. There's tons of them out there now. The person that you've taken a picture of may not. The person that's on that recording may not be okay with it. And that's where we need to be careful. That's where we need to respect others' anonymity. It's a slippery slope, and I don't know the answers to the ends. I'm reading as much about it right now as I possibly can, because after some of the things that have happened in the last few months with 2 individuals that, you know, what happened with them and their work and their personal life by somebody going, hey, this person was at this particular thing, it made me start thinking. And especially after this individual who, I mean, I'll say he's a firefighter, but that's about all I'm gonna say, you know, and his wife shared that with me. And I went, you know, I never thought about it that way. I just didn't. So I also went through and made sure I don't have anybody's pictures from, you know, unless I know that they're completely okay with it. I took those down too, because, you know, not everybody is wanting to be out there. And I think we need to be very careful in how we share content, especially when areas and regions and home groups. I mean, there's home groups now that have Facebook pages, and I know many regions and many areas do. What content do they put on there? You know, they take all the pictures from the convention, you know. Well, at that point, it's okay, because I have somewhat of the aspect or somewhat of the belief that the only people that have access, the only people that you've allowed permission to come on your page are addicts. So I have the assumption that it's that way. But when we do some of the other things we do, the YouTube, or we open up a particular thing to allow anybody in, then, well, now it's back out in the public. And I hope to retire from the federal government at some point in my life, because they pay really good retirement. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Jeff. Next we have Taggart.
Hey, I'm Taggart. I'm an addict.
Hey, Taggart.
Hey, man.
How you doing?
I think I'm going to focus on Facebook. This is a huge, broad topic, and y'all have talked a lot about the personal side of it. I don't, except in private groups. I don't break my anonymity on Facebook if I can help it. I don't announce any type of celebrations, or, you know, I don't do that on there. Yeah. I've got friends that deal with it, where they can set up their contacts in groups where they can share a post and only share it with people that they know are in the fellowship, you know. And I know that because I wasn't going to comment on something they had put on there, and they told me later. He said, well, you could have. I set it up so that, you know, my family and stuff isn't on those posts. That's just people that are in the fellowship. So, and as far as the data mining and Facebook or Google knowing I'm an addict, that cow's done left the barn, you know. So they know, and that's just going to get wilder. I just kind of look at that as I do as being a service. You know, if I'm the treasurer of my home group, the banker's going to know that I'm an addict. I have to break my anonymity in that way. And in that situation, I just have to do my best to honor the spiritual principles we're supposed to be walking by, and hope that there's some other people if I don't, because and not to take on that if I'm not willing to do that. But back to the Facebook, as far as kind of being part of the service structure, I've been a part of a home group that used a Facebook page. We made an agreement that we didn't do group business on that Facebook page. You know, we announced birthdays. We used it like if somebody was running into trouble on chair and they could get out to a bunch of people really quick. Hey, I'm supposed to chair tonight. I'm not going to be able to make it. Can somebody please pick it up? You know, it worked well for that. I was the treasurer of that group, and I would put the treasurer's report out that way. It was a good way to put it out and then save it on there so anybody could go back, you know, months and years back and see the treasurer's reports. It was a good way to do that for the home group. But like I said, we agreed that we didn't do group business on there, and it was a small group, so it didn't really get out of control too much. You know, I remember once maybe there was some topic that was coming up. We started discussing a little bit, more than normal, like in the comments. And I don't know, one of the old timers just kind of popped in there and said, hey, I think it's time we left the rest of this discussion for the business meeting. So it just kind of handled itself. And the Facebook for the home group worked pretty well. Now, the two areas that I've either been a part of or that I was aware of because of regional service that were doing Facebooks, the area wasn't doing them. It was all done by people in the area and they called it unofficial. So it was happening separate to technically accountability, which is kind of a problem. But I think the reason it was happening that way is because the area took the easy way out and just said, we can't do that with the traditions, instead of figuring out how to do it and set up some policy, kind of like my home group did, and have a trusted servant to be a moderator of that group and make sure it was kept private. Now, the positive things about those area groups, if somebody came to that town, it was a good way, or if somebody was new, it was a good way for them to come in contact quick or meet some people for a meeting. It was good for that. If I know somebody that's going to that area now, I'll invite them to be a part. Like if they're going there for vacation, I'll invite them to be a part of that group. And I'll also send them the formal website, but that group is a really good way for them to get in contact with members. Or if somebody's moving there, I'll put them into that Facebook group for that reason, because it's really positive in that way. I shared the link for this convention into that Facebook group. It's really good about things like that. The webmaster for their website, if something's changed or something's going on, he'll jump on there. If somebody will pick up something on that Facebook group asking a question, and somebody will tag about the website, and things get handled really quick because the information flows quickly, and now that's the good side of it. The side that's challenging tends to be that sometimes people start using that rather than following the formal structure. Maybe they get a call from somebody on the phone line that needs a ride, and they just put their phone number out there for 900 people to see. And of course, when that happens, one of us will call up the PR chair and say, hey man, what's going on? Are we doing 12-step calls, on the phone line? Somebody just called an anonymous, a number with anonymous in the name, and we put their phone number out for 900 people, that some of them may not even be, my point is it's going on, you know what I mean? And I think that we've got to figure out a way to deal with it and use it in a more formal manner, and I agree that it's got to be private, but it's going on anyway. I'm also a member of, other Facebook groups. There's a Facebook group about service that I'm a member of, that I can reach out if I've got, something I'm wanting some help with, and I get the experience of trusted servants, all across the world on that, and it helps. And I was a member of one before that hell, I basically had to have somebody sponsor me into that because they didn't want some people coming in there and stirring up trouble, and it was all about service, and that one was really helpful. This new one is broader, and they didn't manage it by limiting participation. They managed it by having decent guidelines and good moderators. So anyway, that's all I got. Thanks.
Well, you guys, y'all have helped to do everything that we discussed in our planning meeting. We've totally opened up the discussion, and and definitely made me think more about my thoughts about this. So anyway, so the next one, Candace got kicked out. Wonderful. So anyway, the next says, let's represent the spiritual principles of our steps, traditions, and concepts guide us in pursuing our public relations aims and our efforts to enhance NA's public image and reputation. These principles apply to our community and service efforts, as well as the personal behavior and attitude of individual NA members. And that comes out of the PR handbook as well. And, you know, I think all of you hit on some great stuff. I mean, you know, just on a personal level for me, I have grown children. I now have grandchildren. I have hopes and aspirations for those children. You know, my oldest son, I used to tell people, they'd ask me how he's doing. I'm saying he's doing pretty good. You know, obviously he doesn't do everything I want him to do, and his dreams are not my dreams. But, you know, when I was his age, I was strung out. And about 2 weeks before Christmas, he got busted for selling reefer. Then they did a search on my 77-year-old aunt's house where he was living. They got him for 3 more distribution charges, and it was all THC. But right there in one swift click, he had 4 felonies, and now he's in long-term treatment. That's the same program that I went through. And so by no means am I the end-all be-all or a fucking glowing example of, you know, how wonderful recovery could be, because obviously if I was, you know, he wouldn't have went down that path. I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but in any regard, you know, for me, I just don't feel like that my higher power has brought me to where I am today to hold that little candle light up under a cup. So, all right, here was the next 2 questions. And like I say, in my mind, when we got started with this, it really was about posing some questions and at some point, ultimately, having the discussion in our region to the point of where we're actually putting some guidelines or policy, you know, insertions in place. I don't believe social media is going anywhere, and I don't believe addicts are going to quit using it. So anyway, how do service bodies use social media to fulfill our primary purpose? And in these changing times, do we need updated service literature? So, you know, and just for an example, with us doing this convention online, you know, we started doing public posts for the convention, and it was posted as the Georgia Regional Convention. You know, the 3 people that were admins of that, you know, their names are hidden. One of them is mine. You know, and we got out there pretty fast. Now, we generated a lot of interest. I sat in on a little workshop with my buddy from Kentucky last weekend, and these ladies from the group from Turkey, there was 4 of them, but it was 3 ladies and another gentleman, and they had done a social media campaign through Facebook, and they spent like $80 and reached 500,000 people in Turkey. Now, obviously, you know, it's a little bit tougher in the States because everybody's spending a little more money here, but I just thought, oh my God, the potential, you know. With that, Nick, you got your hand raised. Chime on in, buddy.
Yes, mate. Thank you, George. So again, thank you everyone for participating. A couple of responses to these questions. Service bodies using social media to fulfill our primary purpose. I think without wanting to focus on particular apps, but one of the things we haven't mentioned is the use of WhatsApp in developing communities around the world, which I believe falls into the big bucket of types of social media. It's incredibly prevalent in Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia. I mean, hugely so. It's a massive communication tool that groups and service bodies use to spread information. I had a brief email exchange with someone who was looking for some service material related to NA newsletters, and it sort of made me smile because the only thing we have is the Narcotics Anonymous newsletter handbook from 1985 or something, and it might as well be chiseled out on a stone tablet. I mean, it's so completely irrelevant to how people communicate. The other thing that kind of the other response I had to that question was there's a Facebook group I'm in called NA Service Solutions. I don't know if that's the one that Taggart was talking about. And, you know, I participate very lightly there. I tread very lightly. And one of the reasons is because I think there's a structural limitation with that kind of, with that medium. Some things it's very good for, and then other things it's almost bad for. It's not, it doesn't work well, and it almost creates problems. It's so problematic to my way of thinking, purely personal opinion. I think it's great for kind of dropping in pieces of information and sharing about stuff, and sometimes asking a direct question. But what I see is these enormous long threads that develop with people responding to the threads. And it's really impossible to me to actually have the kind of conversation and kind of second tradition based process in that environment. It seems to, it allows misinformation to stand. It's really difficult to kind of bring different perspectives together and build consensus. So there's some real limitations to it too. So, you know, I think any conversation about social media needs to really focus on, you know, things that are really good about it and that what it really can do, but also to include cautions about things where perhaps it isn't so helpful. So it's a gray, it's all these shades of gray, which is fine. That's what real life looks like. And then the last question there, do we need updated service literature? Certainly, if people aren't aware of it in this room right now, there is a service pamphlet called Social Media and Our Guiding Principles that you can find on na.org. Just go to na.org, type social media into the search bar at the top right of that home screen, and it will pop you up a link to that pamphlet. It's a really good pamphlet. Now, part of the challenge with any, as the word of, I guess offering a word of caution is, as soon as you create guidelines and written material, it becomes really difficult to change it unless you really build that into the system, unless you design it that way. Our traditional Narcotics Anonymous method of creating service.
Did we lose him?
No, somehow I got muted. Where was I? Anyway, I was just saying our traditional method of creating service material in NA makes it really hard to revise it. And social media revises itself on a month-by-month basis sometimes. So whatever we do when it comes to updating service literature, I think that you, again, have to accept that reality that, like if you read that service pamphlet, it's very non-specific. It talks about principles. And that really is that when it comes to written material, to me, is the only practical way. That if you start putting in too much about instructions about how to set up your Facebook page, it will be out of date in 6 months' time. So one of the things that NA World Services is working on that I think is kind of exciting is service tools for virtual meetings, which is a little bit off topic, but it still falls into that same that same arena of trying to write service material to help people, to give people kind of best practices to do something, and yet the something is constantly changing and evolving. So we have to, but then that's kind of like life, isn't it? I don't do what I did when I had 5 years clean or 10 years clean. I don't do those same things. I have evolved, my life has changed, and my application of the principles is constant. But the principles are constant, but I apply them in different ways and in different areas of my life. And so that kind of brings me to that closing point where it's like, what are the principles? And if we leave with anything, that would be what I would hope that we would leave with, would be to consider the guiding principles of this program and apply them, whatever the situation. All right, that's all I've got.
Yeah, good shit, man. Des, do you have anything else you'd like to throw in?
She does.
Yeah, I actually had my hand up. Thanks, George. I just want to say I always answer this first question anytime that I'm working with a service body. How do service bodies use social media to fulfill our primary purpose? I just always say very carefully and cautiously, and keeping in mind that what I put out there today is going to be there for future members and people who need to be here to see, and to be very, very aware of that. Like not to throw a term out there, but to be mindful of how we're behaving anywhere. Like if I wear an NA shirt and I go to a restaurant and I act a fool and somebody's mother sees that, maybe they're not going to send their child to Narcotics Anonymous, where they might need to be when they need some help. And it works the same way with social media. Making sure that, my service body does not allow social media for sharing of information within the Wisconsin region. And we've talked about it many, many times, and we just have never decided that that's a direction we want to go, even in today's climate. And there's ways to be aware of that. And I know it's a great way to get information out there. And I mean, I was around when we built the website for Wisconsin region, and that was a big step in a forward direction. We had to be really mindful about what we were going to put out there. And then, and I agree 1,000% with what Nick said about the updated service literature. Just being careful, focusing more on the principles of the program than the how-tos, because as I know, as everybody here knows, technology changes every moment. Like today I could be out doing something on a technical site, and within an hour it could be completely changed. I mean, it feels sometimes like that's how quickly things are changing. And I'm just really grateful to be a part of this, to be a part of the conversation, and just encourage people to keep talking about it. I mean, that's what we do. That's what I've always done in Narcotics Anonymous, is I've always been able to talk to the people in the service bodies and to listen to everybody. It's not one voice. It's sometimes that real quiet voice that is the one that I need to hear in a service body. And I'm always cautious and careful and open to hearing that voice. So thank you. That's all I have.
Does anybody else want to share on this? Okay, guys. So real quick, I'm going to try and breeze through this. I know we've went about an hour and 15 minutes, but we've got a dinner break, and it was like pulling teeth trying to get Nick and Des in the room. So I don't want them to leave until we're finished. But that's a joke, guys. I love y'all all. Observing the 12th tradition. Is my participation in social media it's in contradiction with spiritual principles? And do we carry the message of hope and the promise of freedom? So I'll chime on this one. I do my best to like your cat pictures or your you know, the flower at your house, and this pandemic has forced me. I've been taking pictures with a 35mm camera for over a decade, right? And a friend of mine that's on the meeting, he kind of got me introduced into bird watching last year. And so all this spring and summer, I've had a blast with it. It's re-energized my picture of using my photography obsession, because now I have targets to shoot. And I've also got something that I've never really looked at. I'm seeing all these beautiful creatures that, you know, are in harmony in nature right outside my front door in my backyard that I never really paid much attention to. So, you know, these are the type things that I pay attention to and all that. And I'm very opinionated on a wide array of shit. And I have to be real careful not to spit some shit out there that's gonna create those long threads. Even, and, you know, especially, you know, in service groups, I've seen that, and it gets 28 posts later and nobody even knows what in the hell the original argument was about. And, you know, I want to say that I try to, you know, because if you knew me when I was in active addiction, and to see me to what my life has become today, you know, you would have to be able to really see, you would have to really be able to see that there's some hope and there is promise from freedom of addiction. You know, I'd kind of like to tie that back into what Nick was sharing on, you know, basically practicing the principles in the fellowship. You know, because we talked about that when we met a couple of times. And, you know, in all reality, you know, Carl said this in the meeting before, you know, spiritual principles are not in conflict. And there ain't no big I's and little U's here. And just because, you know, I want to go on Facebook and spill my guts, that don't mean I need to share all your shit on Facebook. But, you know, at the end of the day, what I really hoped to do in participating in all of this was, you know, to get the conversation started. And, you know, and I get real belligerent sometimes. And if I need reeling in, hell, y'all reel my ass in. So you need to straighten your ass up. Candace does a pretty good job of that. And does anybody got anything else to share on this?
I'll share for a second.
Great.
My name's Candace and I'm an addict. I'm pretty particular about, I'm very particular about everything actually, but I'm specifically particular about what I share on social media and my recovery. I am part of a few different closed groups that are recovery related. One of them is affiliated with my alma mater of rehab. And then there are a couple like Atlanta recovery community things. And I'm a part of those. What I share on there is I'm very, very discerning about. I do try to offer hope and promise with what I share. Like that's big in what I do. And like periodically, and I have a spiritual advisor. I know that kind of sounds so hokey and new age-ish, but I do. And it's a guy that works at the treatment facility I went to, and he really encourages me to share parts of my story. And so like every once in a while I'll get on there and, you know, just write a little excerpt about yada, yada, yada. And, you know, I find that it's cathartic for me, but it is a little anxiety provoking. But I definitely do it in these closed groups where it feels safe and it doesn't feel as vulnerable. And I feel like I can actually help other people with it. There have been a couple of times where I wish that I maybe hadn't. Like just like initially, like within 10 minutes of sharing it, I'm like, shit, I should have never done it. And then I got over it and I was like, okay, it's done. And the end result was, you know, that it ended up helping people and it gave them hope and promise. And, you know, one of the antics was about me breaking all the bones in my face in a bicycle accident and, you know, riding through the same tunnel years later, clean and, you know, conquering that fear, you know, trying not to share a bunch of war stories and things like that in there because I don't feel like that's effective. That being said, you know, I try not to use social media as any sort of platform for like sharing my feelings and things like that because it's such a slippery slope. It's such a delicate territory. You know, you're out there for everyone to see and anybody can pick it up. I too work in an industry, I work for a financial advisor. And back when I was in active addiction, I had a first degree larceny and forgery on my record. And so, you know, it was a pretty big deal that I got hired at a financial institution. And so, you know, my boss knows about it, but you know, it's tricky. It's tricky trying to navigate the waters of Facebook, and I don't do Instagram really, and I'm not on any other social media other than Facebook, but you know, I hadn't said anything the entire time we were on here. I think it, you know, it's a kind of a, I don't know, it's kind of a personal call. Like, you know, how comfortable do you feel? Where are we willing to use discernment? And do you have a message of hope and freedom to offer? And those are the kinds of things that I really, really think about before I decide to sit down and offer any of myself and my recovery to. Because honestly, I feel like if I'm going to share my recovery with you, it's something that needs to be earned. And it's something that's very special and cherished to me. And so if I'm going to take the time and say, hey, you know, this is a special, vulnerable part of me, I'm going to share it with you. It's either because I want to help them get clean or I feel like they are a special part of my life enough that they're not going to exploit that in me. Anyway, I hope that makes some sort of sense.
Made perfect sense to me. So I think that's groovy. A groovy share. There's Arthur. About time you got here, Arthur. Does anybody else
LaWanda's got her hand up.
come on in?
LaWanda, grateful recovering addict. And sometimes, you know, because I'm a strong, opinionated person, I don't try to, but I try to. I know my personality, but I don't try to infringe it on other people. But I've gotten so much freedom in Narcotics Anonymous that I try to adhere by spiritual principles. And so it says observing the 12th tradition. So what is the 12th tradition? Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personality. Is my participation in social media in contradiction with spiritual principles? Do we carry the message of hope and the promise of freedom? Okay, so I like to deal with the social media at hand that we haven't fully gotten to how we're going to deal with it. And this platform we're on right here. Those of you who know me, physically I appear one way, but that's not necessarily my faith. It's a little deeper. It's something that you'd have to talk to me about because I take an eclectic approach. But where I'm going with this is my participation in social media in contradiction with spiritual principles. And I just want to read the part of this sentence. It says, humility is a byproduct that allows us to grow and develop in an atmosphere of freedom. And I'm going to tell you what gets and gripes my goat. Yeah, I'm gonna share Greg. Greg was on his best behavior, but I'm gonna share what gets it. I mean, you know what? In between the meeting, I'm gonna call Greg. And his last initial is A2. I'm gonna call him George. So next meeting, I won't be calling you Greg. But what gets and gripes my goat is that when I look in the screen and we looks like someone is at the mosque or they're at the church. And I was co-hosting a meeting and I didn't address it. And what I'm talking about is, so like what George has in the background, that's respectable. It's no identity to anything, right? My screen is slow here. Candace has that board in the background. We really can't see, but what I'm talking about is I was in a meeting, somebody had a crucifixion up above their head. And in that same meeting, someone had on some Arabic, some like we were talking about the NA clothing. They had on t-shirts with Arabic letters, a hat that said Allah. And most of the time they have some boards up behind their head advertising their faith. And to me, that's the appearance of church. And what that does is that takes away a person's freedom to me, because I remember in the beginning, they used to say things like, we don't care. You can make God your light. You can make God the light, the door, the chair. Now that used to gripe my goat too. But when I was in enough pain, it didn't matter. But what I came to understand is they weren't endorsing or selling a religion. And here on this social media virtual platform, no matter who the landlord is, whether Zoom, Blue Jeans, or whatever, we need to be really careful what is in our background. Because when we're sharing a message, I don't want the message, I don't want, and at that meeting, I had my head covered. I even took my head covering off. I don't want my message to be covered, because the message is supposed to be a message of hope and a promise of freedom, by Megan beginning to think that she needs to follow my way, because we talk about a God, and I don't understand this God, but we talk about having a God of your understanding. So if Megan thinks that I'm sharing a message of hope and a message of freedom, she might think that she needs to follow me in my way of my personal faith outside of here. So I need to be real careful on how I present myself, that I'm presenting myself as a person who has faith in God, but not in a religion. I said a whole lot of words just to get to that point. Sorry about that, you all. But this platform, what's in the background, need to be really, really careful, because that speaks volumes, especially to the newcomer. So George has sat down and talked to me. So George might not look at me based on what I might put on that particular day. But on the screen, I really, really need to be careful, because the message is not of religion. And it tells us that it's a spiritual program. It's not a religious program. And I really wanted to talk about that. As a matter of fact, I chair a concept meeting, but it's a service dialogue meeting. And 2 weeks ago, we spent the whole week talking about the presentation of that, because endorsement is whether it's implied subtly or non-subtle. And to me, that's what it is. It's an endorsement. And yes, I have to say to me, because all of this is based on our own interpretation. So I just really wanted to share on that question. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Alonda. We have Megan next.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm an addict.
Hi, Megan.
Hey, yeah, just first, thanks for everyone who put in the work to do this. I appreciate you guys still holding the convention. And on this topic, like, I wasn't sure if originally I thought it was talking about like the anonymity, I guess, because the anonymity is the 12th tradition, and like, is my participation in social media like giving up my anonymity? And is that in contradiction with spiritual principles? And for that part, I'm, you know, not really sure. Well, I guess it's up to me if I want to say that I'm a member of Narcotics Anonymous on social media or not. But then with that does come the responsibility of being mindful of what I'm sharing because of like what everybody else has said. If I identify myself as a member of Narcotics Anonymous, then I need to make sure I'm representing that in a way that, you know, carries a message of hope and a promise of freedom. I found that since this, just in general, I'm not really on Facebook, because it makes me not really like a lot of people. And it's kind of hard to go, like for me, I have a hard time going into meetings and seeing people that I have seen their posts and I like don't think they're spiritual posts, or their just opinions differ greatly from mine. And the difference of opinion is fine, but sometimes the delivery of the opinion I find offensive. And then that's taking away from my own recovery if I can't see past the messenger and hear the message. So for me, it's better to just stay off of social media, and just because we all have so many differences, but when we're in an NA meeting, all those little differences don't come up as much, like because we're not talking about politics or whatever else people may talk about on social media. And like, because we have those, you know, kind of like principles and or traditions of like no outside issues, it allows kind of like more unity, I feel like, on the disease of addiction. And when you have people communicating on social media, I feel like it gives people a lot more, I don't know if bravado is the word, but maybe courage, like keyboard gangsters. And some of the things that people say to other members of Narcotics Anonymous on social media, I don't think they would say to their face if they were sitting in a meeting together. Those kinds of conversations wouldn't come up. And I don't know. So I just think like there is, and sorry if just let me know if we need to go, but I'll wrap it up. I just think like I see more ugliness on Facebook pages than I do good things. Every once in a while, you'll see someone like, oh, here's a celebration, or oh, can someone take this person to a meeting? I mean, not so much anymore because a lot of them are closed, but I used to see things like that. But most of the time, like, I don't really find any recovery even on the NA pages. So I just personally like to stay off of social media. It's better for my mental health. And then also like, you know, you're not offending people that you have something so deep in common with. Even if it's inadvertently, by sharing your opinion, you might be like cutting a tie with someone that might save your life one day. You don't know. So that's it. Thanks.
Thanks for sharing. You're muted. You're unmuted. No, you're still
Oh, okay. Y'all didn't even hear me, did you?
nothing.
Well, I wanted to thank Nick and Des and so much for hanging out to the bitter end. And what I said was, however, I'm not done with you yet. We're just done with this workshop. So I love you both, and I will be in touch with you before you know it. Thanks for your hard work. I wanted to show this one slide that Candace suggested that we put in here. And anyway, it's a discussion that the Arts and Graphics guy put up on our regional Facebook page to just kind of explain all the colors of the butterfly and everything. Thought it was really groovy. And if any of you are interested in getting your own copy of this along with this presentation, all you got to do is email me at webmaster@grcna.org. Okay. And literally all you got to do is go to the website and hit contact us and you'll see my email. I love y'all. Has anybody else got anything that they got to share?
Thank you.